On this episode of ResiWeek, we talk tariff relief and getting the most out of your lighting system. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek, episode 209. Learn what you can.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Atlas IED, innovative audio solutions for every business environment, and by Daylight, the leading producer of high-quality projection screens worldwide.
Welcome to ResiWeek. This is your weekly wrap-up of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv, and this week I am pleased to be joined by my good friend, longtime friend, Heather Sidorowicz. She is the president of Southtown AV. Yeah, you are one of my longtime friends. Good to see you, Heather. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm glad you didn't take off Super Monday. How are you?
I'm well, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I had the little small Super Bowl party and it's over. But the best part is tacos for lunch today. It was great.
There you go. I too am having Super Bowl leftovers on Monday.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Today.
That's the best part of Super Bowl, in my opinion, other than the fact that future Hall of Famer Patrick Mahomes won. That was great. Wearing red, possibly, as I'm roping you into this, Michael, sorry, in honor of the Chiefs' win, we have Michael Braithwaite. He is the CTO of Screen Innovations. How are you, sir?
I am great. Fantastic. Enjoying my Super Monday.
Yes. Everybody, I don't get taking it off, but I also don't drink, so that might be part of it. Notwithstanding, let's jump right into it rather than waxing poetic about the Super Bowl that was fantastic to watch. Coming to us from CE Pro and the one and only Jason Knott, the industry is getting a long-awaited tariff release. The Phase 1 trade deal was signed by the U.S. and China and it is going to cut tariffs from 15% to 7.5% on loudspeakers, smart speakers, turntables, TVs, projectors, and a whole lot more. If you've been following that, this whole somewhat debacle, they instituted tariffs. They're now changing that rate a little bit, cutting it in half, as the article says. And those changing percentages will affect products that land in the U.S. after February 15th of 2020. Where this matters for us and why we're talking about it is not only obviously do the tariffs affect a lot of products that we see every day, but specifically it has driven many manufacturers to raise pricing. Not everybody did. Some people are phasing that through. Everyone's kind of handling it their own way. So speaking of handling it their own way, Heather, I do want to start with you on this. How are you internally? How do HTPs go about managing these kind of really fast, somewhat unexpected price increases, decreases, etc.? How do you go about adjusting your pricing model to follow along with whatever the heck is happening politically?
I think that we are pretty used to changing prices on the fly because we've sold TVs and TV prices change daily. So each week you get an email from some of your distributors that say, here's this week's pricing and it's going to change next week. So I think we can adjust pretty quickly. As for the tariffs, the ones that did have price increases, we changed that throughout our internal systems and we did pass that along to the client. What I'm curious about though, and I do not know the answer, is will these manufacturers pull back those price increases? I'm going to guess not.
So let me just ask you a quick follow-up to that. If, per se, a friendly manufacturer said, hey, I'm going to roll these back a little bit now that this increase has dropped, heck, maybe they'll just give you 5% back instead of the 7.5%. Would you then adjust your pricing structure? Or does it become too frustrating?
In this day and age, everything's transparent, right? No one's buying, so if we approach things by selling product, and we're trying to make the most off the product, we'll lose because it's the internet age and they're going to find out what your price is and they're going to Google it and then they're going to pretend they know more than you anyway. So it's about selling that solution and that overall, and hopefully you're making your profit through the solution piece, not through just the product. So yeah, I absolutely would roll it back if that was added to for us.
Very good. Michael, as a manufacturer, you know, you don't need to give up any inside baseball, although we're always helpful and appreciative if you do.
Good for you.
But how do manufacturers go about managing this? Because at least from a HTP standpoint, we kind of know what our hard costs are coming in. We can adjust that on the fly. Most shops don't stock much anymore. So they're not dealing with pricing that was based on something that was put in effect, you know, 6 months, a year in the past. How do manufacturers manage this? And, you know, can you claw back when stuff like this comes up, or have you already built stuff into that model that you're working off of?
Well, I think it's an interesting question because, and I'm probably not going to favor a lot of fans here, but most of these manufacturers are, so let me see how I can say this. They're not very good at how they source products and how they source their products. I'll give you an example. So at SI, everything we have here is done in Austin, for example, and including the electronics. So people will see the electronics and they're like, yeah, but what about that? Yes, even those boards are done in Austin. And the funny thing is the tariffs are affecting, obviously, if you're buying a finished product, and that finished product is sent from China to the US. Mm-hmm. Okay, so again, I'll go back to whatever it is you're buying, that could have been designed and done completely differently. It almost doesn't matter even the type of product that it is. We have introduced at the last CEDIA, we introduced a product called Janus, which is a very advanced power communication and power distribution product. If you looked at that and you're like, oh, that looks like a Cisco or this, you know, that was made overseas. And again, it's not. And even when in our screens, our motorized screens, there's electronics, we have boards in there that open and close the doors and, you know, the motorization to come down. And even all those, it depends on how you're purchasing. So anybody building anything electronic now, some of the parts are only made in China these days. There are some things that are only made in China. And so some of that hurts from the vendor side. And so from a tariff point of view, hopefully the vendors are either cutting back and giving you the better pricing as a part of that. I would say from an SI or from lots of companies who manage that a little bit differently, where we didn't introduce an increase. And so even if the component that we were buying did have that, there are many ways to buy that same component. Even if it is originally sourced in certain countries where there's tariffs. And so that's what I'm saying. There's it's a laziness on the manufacturing side where they do something like that. That's my opinion anyways.
And some products had pretty substantial increases. I mean, Sonos, right? They held it for so long, and then they just increased it, parts, the port, the amp. But now smart speakers is one of the ones they're pulling back. I wonder if they'll pull back with pricing.
It'll be interesting to see the correlation between these kind of news articles and the general populace.
Right, because I bet most
people
don't know about.
Yeah.
It's a slippery slope that you go down, because if you're going to increase the pricing and then when the tariff goes away and you're going to decrease it, as Matt mentioned, are you really going to give them back the full amount? Are you and that was
the danger of them telling why they did it. If they would have just said, hey, because of life we have to increase,
correct,
because of the tariffs. So maybe that was in the way that they went to media with that.
And I would also say that their vendors, whoever they're working with, so on a Sonos case, they're working with pretty large contract manufacturers like electronics. And so when you look at things like that, you know, talk about inside baseball, I guess, but when you look at things like that, if their relationship is not good with that vendor or the sourcing, they did get hammered. I'll tell you that we have relationships and we also work with lots of different vendors. So the truth is, we even on components where it would be, that manufacturer is the one that was giving the slight difference, because the tariff was being paid by whoever is importing it. So if we're importing that, we are the ones that paid that tariff, right?
Right.
It wasn't somebody else paying that tariff. And so when the manufacturer is, and so here's our choice, and this is why I say we're an equal opportunity offender. We will go and we'll look at, as long as it meets the spec and the quality is there, we'll look at multiple sources for parts. If you only have one source for a part, you have a serious issue on your product, because if anything happens, like tariffs or a virus or any weird thing happens, your product is at jeopardy. So you have to have multiple sources and be able to pull. So the vendors that got hit by that were supplying that product, they know that, for real people who are really developing stuff. And so they adjusted those. And so yes, the importer paid them, but we actually received the part at that reduced price already. So that's why I said it's up to, I call this laziness on the vendor. Oh, poor us. We are not good at developing products, and we're not good at doing all this. So we're buying something and we're putting our sticker on it. And here's our sticker on this product. And I'm gonna have to raise your price 15% because we actually are putting a sticker on this box that's made over there. I'm sorry, I'm calling you out on that. So.
And there's the Inside Baseball. Come to this show for. Hey, thanks for watching the first segment of this week's episode. To catch the entire show, please click the link below or visit avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.